Somewhere in your notes, there is a number for how many people live in your world. Find it. Now look at it properly, because every single one of those people is wearing something. Nobody in your world is naked. Not the beggars, not the soldiers, not the farmers you never got round to naming. So somebody made all of that, by hand, one thread at a time. And here is the part that should worry you. Your world does not have enough hours in it to be dressed. Cloth isn't a material your world buys, it's time your world spends, and it is the single biggest thing your people do with their lives. Not the fields, not the forges. Thread. If you are a world builder, you have costed your armies. You have probably costed your grain. Have you ever, once, costed a shirt? I know you haven't. And I want to be clear that I am not making fun of you, because neither had I. But that is not a small gap in the ledger. That is most of your civilization's working life sitting off the books entirely. So how big is the bill, actually? There is a number for it. 4 people spent a year of their lives proving it. And once you have heard it, you cannot look at a fantasy map the same way again. I'm Owen, and I spend an unreasonable amount of time thinking about the work nobody puts on the map. If you run a campaign, write fantasy, or you are simply the kind of person who has genuinely wondered where the rope comes from, subscribe, drop a like, and let me show you the industry your world has been running on for free. Roskilde, Denmark, the Viking Ship Museum. They do something there that almost nobody does. They don't just study the ships, they build them again. Real timber, real tools, real methods. The Skuldelev ships pulled out of a fjord and put back together plank by plank, then sailed. And when they did it, they ran into something they were not expecting. The hull was the easy part. What do you think the expensive bit of a longship is? Be honest. You are picturing timber, aren't you? Oak. Shipwrights. Somebody swinging in ads for a season. Wrong. The expensive bit is the sail. The textile archaeologist Eva Anderson Strand worked out what a single square sail actually cost in labor. 120 square meters of wool. Not woven by any machine, because no machine existed. Spun by hand on a drop spindle, thread by thread, then woven, then treated so it would hold wind and shed water. 4 women, 10 hours a day, a full year. For one sail. Say that out loud because everything else in this video hangs off it. 4 women, 10 hours a day, 1 year, 1 sail. A separate team ran the same problem by a different route and landed on 5,840 hours of work. 2 methods, 1 answer. Now hold that up against the hull. A crew of shipwrights could have a hull in the water in a few months. So the wood, the thing you have been drawing whole forests for, the thing your kingdom went to war over, is not what limits your fleet. Thread is. Let's make that hurt properly. Your world has a raiding fleet. Say 30 ships, which is modest. I have seen your maps, you have drawn worse. 30 ships means 30 sails. That is 120 women, 10 hours a day, for a year, producing nothing else at all. No food grown. No children minded, no cloth for anybody else in the entire kingdom. And what happens to a sail? Salt, sun, wind, rot. They wear out. So this was never a one-time purchase. That is a permanent department of your economy that you have never once mentioned. How many ships does your navy have? Go on, do the multiplication right now while I'm talking. That fleet you handed your maritime kingdom in a single sentence of world building? You just conscripted a village, for a generation. And here is the question nobody asks. What did those hands stop doing? Because those women were not sitting idle before you needed a navy. They were already spinning, for their own households, which needed clothes, blankets, sacks, rope, bandages. You did not find spare labor. You took it from somewhere, and the somewhere is now short. And I have only been talking about sails. Look at your army for a moment. Every soldier is wearing a tunic and carrying a spare, because you cannot wash and dry wool every day on campaign. Every soldier sleeps under canvas, cloth. Every ration of grain travels in a sack, cloth. Every wound gets bound with a strip of something, cloth. Every rope on every ship, every banner over every gate, every tent, every awning in every market your characters walk through. All of it is fiber that somebody twisted by hand, one arm's length at a time. So let me ask you something genuinely uncomfortable. Your army marches for a season and comes home. What state are its clothes in? Because that is a resupply problem nobody in fantasy has ever had. Armor gets described in loving detail. Swords get names. Nobody has ever written the quartermaster who has to find a fresh tunic for every man before the frost comes. And he is the one who actually decides whether there is a campaign next year at all. Now I know exactly what a lot of you are thinking. Fine, Owen, my world is bigger, more people, more hands, more spinners, problem solved. You're right, genuinely. A bigger world does give you more spinners, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. But watch where the problem goes when you do that, because it does not disappear. It relocates, and it lands somewhere far more useful to you. Every extra person you add to your world is a person who needs clothing. One set of garments for a single adult couple works out at something in the order of 36,000 meters of yarn. 36 kilometers of thread, produced a few centimeters at a time by a hand and a stick. So population does not buy you out of this. Population arrives already holding an invoice. Add people and you get more spinners and more shirts that need spinning, in roughly the same proportion. What you have bought is not a fleet. What you have bought is an argument about who spins, who is exempt, and who decides. Which is a considerably better story than the fleet was. Now come at the same idea from completely the other side. If cloth is stored human time, then cloth isn't really good at all. It's a currency. And here is what convinced me this is a law of worlds rather than a quirk of one place. Two civilizations with no idea the other existed arrived at exactly the same answer. Start with Iceland. Iceland had a problem you might recognize from your own map. No silver mines, no mint, no emperor to stamp a face onto anything. So what does a country use for money when it has no metal? It used cloth. Vaðmál, homespun woolen twill made on farms, overwhelmingly by women. And I need you to understand this was not some loose arrangement where neighbors swapped blankets. It was law. By 1117, it is written into Grágás, the Icelandic law code, and the Alþingi, the assembly, had already fixed prices for nearly all goods in units of vaðmál. The law even specified the width, 2 L's, an L being roughly 49 centimeters. Weave it narrow and it stopped being money. In principle, an ounce of homespun answered to an ounce of silver. Sit with that for a second. Can you name another country whose entire money supply was manufactured at home, on a loom, by women, to a specification set by Parliament? Think about what that does to a story. A bad wool year is not a hardship, it's a currency crisis. The man who controls the sheep controls inflation. And when somebody in a saga pays a blood price, somebody's daughter spun it. It runs the other way too, and this is the bit I'd steal if I were you. If your money is made by hand, then your money can be made faster by making people work harder. So what is your world's population actually doing in the months when nothing grows? If your answer is waiting for spring, you have left half your economy switched off. Winter isn't downtime in a world like this. Winter is production season. Now cross an ocean and 4,000 years of entirely separate development. In the Andes, the Inca had gold, enormous quantities of it. They had silver too, and the thing they valued above both was cloth. The finest grade was called cumbi, alpaca and vicuña wool, woven so finely that the first Europeans to see it could not work out how it had been done. Production was a state monopoly. It was woven in state institutions called aqllakuna, the houses of the chosen women, by weavers known as aqllakuna, alongside male specialists called cumbi kamayoks, the keepers of the fine cloth. Cumbi served as tax and as currency, and the very best of it was treated as more precious than metal. And they burned it, as an offering to the gods. What does that tell you? You do not burn the cheap thing to impress a god. And notice who was doing the weaving in both places. Iceland, women on scattered farms under a specification written down by men. The Andes, women selected by the state, relocated to the capital, working inside institutions built for the purpose. Two systems that could not possibly have copied one another, both arriving at the same conclusion. The thing that makes the money should be kept somewhere you can watch it. So where is that building on your map? And who is standing at the door? One more fast, because I want you to see the width of this. Athens wove a new robe for Athena, the Peplos, and carried it up to the Acropolis at the city's great festival. The weaving took 9 months. That is one of the wealthiest cities of its age, at the height of its powers, and the showpiece civic gift it offers its own patron goddess is a garment. And it still ate most of a year. So here is the pattern, and it is the reason I made this video. You have been drawing mines. You have been putting guards on gold. And whoever holds the mine is rich, absolutely. But whoever holds spinning holds the mint. So, who spins in your world? If you cannot answer that in one sentence, then you do not actually know who in your world is rich. You only know who is wearing the jewelry. I want to be fair to you here, because this is not a stupid mistake. It is a completely reasonable one, and I made it for years without noticing. Why does everybody miss the biggest industry in the pre-industrial world? Because every other industry has a building. The forge has a smithy, the grain has a mill, the ore has a mine, the wine has a press. You can draw all of them. You can put them on a map, stand a lord next to them, tax them at a gate, and burn them down in Act 3. They are visible, and being visible is what gets a thing budgeted, in history and in your notes. Spinning has no building. A drop spindle fits in one hand. It was done while walking to market, while minding children, while waiting, while talking, while watching a pot. It happened in the gaps of every other job, everywhere, constantly, for thousands of years. And because it never needed a roof, it never left ruins. No ruins, no archaeology. No archaeology, no picture in your head. No picture in your head, nothing on your map. Do you see the trap? The largest industry in the pre-industrial world is invisible for precisely the same reason it was so enormous. It was everywhere, so it was nowhere in particular. There is a second reason, and this one is about us rather than about the past. We budget the work that looks like work. A man swinging a hammer in a hot room reads instantly as labor. A woman spinning while she talks to her sister does not. It looks like leisure with something in her hands. It was not leisure. It was the single largest allocation of human hours on the planet, and it got quietly filed under what women do anyway. Your world almost certainly inherited that filing error from ours. Go and have a look. I'd bet the loom in your setting is decoration in somebody's cottage, and the mine has a name, a lord, and a war over it. And the language kept the receipt. In English, spinster meant a woman who spins from the late 1300s. By the 1600s, that same word had become the legal term for a woman with no husband, because that is simply what everyone assumed she would be doing with her hands. We kept the word long after we forgot the bill. Right. Some of you have had your hand up for 8 minutes now. Your world has magic, so you give it a spell that spins. Fine. Genuinely, that is fine. But look carefully at what you just did. If cloth is money, and in Iceland and the Andes it literally legally was, then a spell that produces cloth is not a labor-saving convenience. It's a printing press. Your little spinning cantrip is counterfeiting. So the interesting question was never whether the spell exists. The question is, who is permitted to cast it? Every state that has ever run a mint has had laws about who may strike coin, and punishments wildly out of proportion to the value stolen. Because it was never really theft. It's an attack on the state itself. So what happens if you give your world a guild that guards a spinning spell the way a treasury guards its dies? An execution for the unlicensed. A border where the cloth is suspiciously cheap and everyone knows why. You have just been handed a criminal underworld, a smuggling route, and a casus belli, All of it free, out of a spell you were about to use to skip the boring part. And it gets better, because now you have to decide what that spell does to the value of everything else. If a mage can conjure a bolt of good cloth in an afternoon, then cloth stops being expensive, which means every fortune in your world that was measured in cloth has just evaporated. Who did that ruin? And what did they do about it? That isn't a world-building detail. That is the opening chapter of a revolution. The boring part was the plot. 5 things you can do tonight. No spreadsheet required. Price one garment in days, not coins. Pick one character, the obvious one, your protagonist. Who spun that shirt? How many days did it take them? You only ever have to do this once. Everything downstream recalculates itself the moment you know the answer. Name your spinners. Which people, which gender, which season, which hours of the day. Servants did it is not an answer. It's a hole where an economy should be. And if the honest answer turns out to be every woman in the kingdom, always, forever, congratulations, you have just discovered something enormous about your world's politics that you did not invent on purpose. Cap your fleet by thread, not timber. Count the sails on your map. 4 women and a year for each one. Now ask whether your kingdom genuinely has that many spare hands, and what those hands stopped doing the day the king ordered a navy. Put cloth in a will, or a wage, or a tribute list, or a ransom. One line does it. A soldier paid partly in cloth. A dowry counted in bolts rather than coins. An heirloom cloak that is genuinely worth killing over. It costs you a sentence and it makes a reader believe your entire economy. Break it once. Not a famine, everybody writes famines. A bad wool year. A blight in the flax. A plague among the sheep. A shortage of the one thing nobody in your world thought to stockpile, because nobody in your world ever thought about it at all. Here is what I want to leave you with. You have been treating your world's wealth as something kept in a vault, behind a door, under a dragon. It never was. It was walking around on people's backs, and every stitch of it was somebody's hours, taken out of their one and only life and twisted into a thread you could hold between 2 fingers. 4 women, 10 hours a day, 1 year, 1 sail. That is the exchange rate between human life and the things your world takes for granted, and you now know it, and cannot unknow it. Tolkien understood this, and it is my favorite quiet joke in the whole book. The Fellowship leaves Lothlorien, and the greatest gift the elves give them is not a sword. It's cloaks. And when the hobbits ask whether the cloaks are magic, the elves are almost baffled by the question. They are simply very well made, by people who had the time to make them well. The most valuable thing the oldest and richest people in Middle-earth can hand you is cloth. He was not being modest. He was being accurate. So tonight, open your notes, go to your largest city, and write one number beside it. How many people in there spin? Then tell me in the comments what your world wears and who paid for it in hours. I read them all, and the good ones end up in videos. Next time, we go after what your world eats when the stores have run out and the harvest is still 2 months away. I'm Owen. Somebody is holding a spindle somewhere on your map. Go and find out who.